Yeah, that's right. We've got a lot of new Marvel Snap cards to discuss, including this super sick Sinister Six card you see right here behind me. These are the latest datamined cards from the new Marvel Snap patch. As always, these are not final at this stage. We still see some number tweaks here and there. We've even seen some crazy reworks when we see some of these early versions of cards. So this might be a preview of what we're going to get in the future, but just keep in mind if something seems broken or busted, it might actually get nerfed before it comes out, or the other way around. Sometimes cards get buffed too. So all that said, we're going to go ahead and talk about each of these cards, and at the end of the video, I'm going to rank them from the ones I think are going to be the best to the worst. But let's go ahead and kick things off here with what is just a super cool card, the Sinister Six. And as you can see, this is a 6/12 with a game start effect. The first 6 characters you draw are evil, and then after you play them all, merge them into this and add this to the last one's location. So basically, after those cards have all been played, sort of your marked cards, almost like a Zombie Galacti has marked them, right? But this case, it's going to be the literal first 6 cards you draw, or characters you draw. So that would be your opening hand, I guess, plus 2 more. So I guess by like what, turn 3, you would have all of your Sinister Six evil dudes. You might not be able to play them all by turn 3, but as you play them out, they're all going to merge into Sinister Six. And when they merge, they will lose their effects, but they will retain the stats, and all of the stats will be combined together. So the power values will be, you know, whatever the amalgamation is, plus an extra 12 from the Sinister Six card itself. So, you know, if they're like 5 power average, that's 30 points at a base, and then an extra 12 for a 42-point monster Sinister Six played wherever you play that final card, which 42 points is going to win a location a vast majority of the time in Marvel Snap these days. So it could be bigger, could be smaller, but you get the idea. It's just an absolute powerhouse that solos a spot. But then I just ask myself, how on earth do you win the next spot? Because you've played basically 6 cards to go all in on one spot. How much energy do you have remaining, and how many other cards do you actually just have remaining to complete and compete against a secondary location, right? Like, how all in are you going to be on your Sinister Six? Because, you know, it might take like 6 turns to play out all 6 of those dudes depending on the cost. So you might say, well, I'm going to run way lower cost cards, right? Well, then you've got a deck that's stuffed with so much low cost stuff. How do you actually win another place? Some things that come to mind for me are almost like hit monkey decks or something, where it's like I can play a bunch of cheap 1s or 2s or whatever. They get merged into the Sinister Six, and I almost wait to do it on the final turn so that I can also, like, you know, dump a hit monkey or whatever and get some points elsewhere to compete that way. That said, of course, your hit monkey might be one of the first cards you draw, so you'd have to do more than just hit monkey. You might need, you know, multiple win conditions. Another angle to consider is stuff like copying your Sinister Six, like Arnim Zola. If you get the Sinister Six down early, you could play Arnim Zola on 6 and duplicate that 42 power dude, right? And you'd be like, oh my god, that's great. But what if your Arnim Zola is one of the first 6 cards you draw, right? It's like, shoot, now I'm not getting the Sinister Six until I play the Arnim Zola. So you have a secondary win condition there. You have like a Taskmaster, which I think maybe Taskmaster will work. With the way merging works, they do seem to kind of become the same card. So even though the Sinister Six itself is pulled into play and it's not played specifically, it might inherit the played nature from the previous card. As long as the ordering is right, Taskmaster might work. I'm not actually sure. I think it might, technically. This is just stuff from Man Spider I'm thinking about. But same thing, right? Like, Taskmaster could also get hit. Taskmaster and Arnim Zola could get hit. How many, like, secondary win conditions do you have to run to make this thing actually work? And of course, if 2 6-drops get hit, you're never actually going to complete your Sinister Six in most scenarios, because, like, you don't have time to play all of those. So, like, what does the deck structure look like? And more specifically, how do you win that next place? Because this is just, you know, I talk about, like, Strange Supreme all the time, how risky that is, condensing all of that power into one dude, and how sometimes that can backfire because you don't know where it's going to pull from necessarily, like in Thanos decks or whatever. This is that, but like on steroids, where it's like you're intentionally doing that. You're intentionally putting all your eggs in one basket and in one card. So I haven't cracked this egg yet. Speaking of egg metaphors, I'm like wondering if there's something I'm missing. You know, I haven't spent all day thinking about this or anything, just 5-10 minutes here considering the possibilities. So I'm curious if there's some ideas in the comments that can like figure out exactly what this deck looks like. But I'm basically just concerned about like the demand to play all 6 of your evil characters for basically kind of a 12-point bonus. But, you know, it's a free 12 points, basically, if you kind of think about it that way, right? But it's a free 12 points. It comes at this, like, deck restriction and position restriction and, like, you know, risk, because God forbid, you know, Shadow King or Shang-Chi hits. It's like, there's just a lot of work for basically a, you know, 12 power bonus for free. So, you know, is there merge synergies to get it over the hump? Like, what is it that makes me want to run this card? Because I think the idea is so sick. The flavor is like an absolute home run. It's a freaking cool looking card in every way. And I don't actually think there's a base art, by the way, but just a cool freaking Marvel Snap card. But at the same time, I'm like, dude, I just don't know how to play this well, if that makes sense. All right, moving on here to Spider-Man Brand New Day. This is, of course, a tie-in with the upcoming movie. He's a 1/2, reads movable twice, which if you didn't see the patch notes, movable is a new keyword, which just means you can move this. It's basically Nightcrawler. So this case, you can actually move him twice, so better than Nightcrawler. And after this moves to a location, give one of your other cards there +1 power, even unrevealed ones, which... that's pretty cool because moving happens before your cards reveal, right? So it's nice that they gave that cool little bonus. Good too for the sake of, like, you know, something that reveals and the power matters. You know, Black Panther, it comes in with that buff or whatever. That's sometimes going to be impactful. But ultimately, like, yeah, this is basically then a 1/2 that can kind of give 2 extra points at a base. So, you know, 2 turns +1 each turn. That's a 1/4 in total output, but also a ton of flexibility as well, right? And those buffs also can be magnified. You hit a Captain Carter, you're really pumped. So this just looks like a strictly better Nightcrawler to me. Like, Nightcrawler, of course, at 1/3, but like, you're going to get the buffs out of this. Like, this is just going to be a better Nightcrawler, which is already a great card. Like, we already see a lot of use cases for Nightcrawler. And on top of that, of course, if you have other ways to move this, then you can realize that benefit even more times. So it might not just be +1 and +1, but, you know, if you move it with a Heimdall later, you can net another point here or there. It's not going to be a priority move target because the kind of points per move is lower than all the other move scalers of the world, the Vultures, the Human Torches, etc. But you might catch some incidental moves here and there. It's like, oh yeah, okay, a location moved this, again, Heimdall, whatever. So the upside's a little bit higher. Maybe sometimes it's a 1/5 or a 1/6 in total output, which again, just kind of makes it a better Nightcrawler, which I think move decks, of course, we're going to see even more move synergy cards as well to kind of support just having a bunch of movable stuff. But then I kind of think this looks like a general use card too, just like a good generic 1-drop that a lot of decks would be like, yeah, dude, I really value the flexibility on this. The repositioning factor is really cool. And, you know, it's just as good of a total stat output as stuff like Hydra Bob, basically better than Nightcrawler. So, yeah, nothing crazy flashy about this card, but it just looks good, I think. Moving on here to Scorpion Spider-Man Brand New Day. So again, of course, movie tie-in. I guess this is what Scorpion's going to look like in the movie, which is pretty crazy. This is a 6/8, which is nuts. Like, such a different stat line and cost than the original Scorpion, but has this cool ongoing double the power reductions on all enemy cards, which for affliction decks, there can actually be some pretty big power reductions. Even, you know, if you think about like a hazmat, which, you know, is sort of a shallow but wide power reduction, you know, if you hit 6-7 things with hazmat, this is going to have an extra 6-7 points. Why did I use those 2 numbers? No, what have I done? No. So that, you know, that kind of makes this look like a 6/15 if it's doing 7 extra power in debuffs, right? But that's kind of a shallow version. There's also cards that can go really deep on those power reductions as well. You know, we've got stuff like Omega Sentinel and Caliban now, which are like hitting for -7. You get a couple of those in play, and then your Scorpion, you're talking about an extra 14 points of affliction potentially, right? You know, there's also stuff like Cyclops can sometimes stack up in a high evo deck and just hit the same target 4 or 5 times, right? So I think there's a lot of worlds where this basically comes down as 20 plus power net total. And, you know, nicely too, that power will kind of be flexed across multiple spots in most cases, right? It'll be maybe a couple taller debuffs, a couple wider debuffs if there's stuff like Hazmat in the mix, but you also, you know, get to have that 8 that you can kind of choose where to put it. So it's like, oh yeah, I know I'm going to hit them with the Caliban over there. So that's going to be, you know, like negative 14 there. That's going to cover that spot. So let's go Scorpion over here. Like, it just gives you a lot of little manipulations on power. So this looks like a fantastic finisher for Affliction decks, right? I think I actually like this better than something like an Ajax, like of course, slightly different costs, but I think this just like that can sometimes feel a little too all in and like too committed. And sometimes like, oh, well, they just won that spot. I'll just win the other spots and they can't really recover. Scorpion giving you that more flexibility feels like a better follow-up to me. So I think this could slot into like a full-on committed Affliction deck. Maybe even the high evo package makes sense here, where you cut something like the Hulk, but you just lean in hard on the Affliction side, you know, and it's Abomination, Scorpion, that sort of stuff instead. That feels really good to me too. So this just looks like a very strong card. Moving on here to a new collectible skill. This is Spider Sense, which I love skills that are like, you know, fastball special, Spider Sense, referencing like super iconic Marvel sort of abilities or whatever. That's cool. 5 cost here on reveal. Give your characters here +2 power, and that costs 1 less for each movable card that you've played. So we just talked about movable. You know, we saw Spider-Man Brand New Day was a movable card. A bunch of the current cards in game are also movable. You know, it's a long list, but Nightcrawler, Vision, Nocturne, Spider-Punk, you know, there's just like, you know, you guys get it. All the cards that can move of their own volition are movable cards. So if you stack a bunch of movable stuff in your deck, this could very easily become, you know, a 1 cost skill, a 0 cost skill. I think maybe something like a 2 or 1 cost is going to be a more common discount on this one, but at 1 or 2, I think this is pretty good, right? Like, this is basically +6 total power, because you're only going to have 3 available cards in a given spot, right? But, you know, a 1/6 is pretty solid. I think that's good, particularly if you have cards that in any way care about that buff in some extra way. You could almost see, like, is there going to be some sort of hybrid movable buff deck or I've got the Captain Carter or something in the mix, or, you know, maybe it's Human Torch I want to buff before I move him so that his stats get even bigger when I double him, right? You can think of a few angles there. Most move cards don't really care about stats in any extra way, but, you know, still, if this is a 0/6, you're not going to be mad about that, right? Like, okay, yeah, I'm going to play the 0/6. Like, that's fine, right? I just get this nice dump. So I think this feels just, you know, good, clean, efficient. You know, this could really juice a movable deck that's probably a little bit different, for the record, than a move deck. As we see more and more cards throughout this video, I think we're going to see kind of 2 sides to move: the big flashy move stuff, the Human Torch style of old, where you're just trying to get like things moved a lot, versus this is going to be almost more like a, you almost say like an ongoing deck, where it's going to be more about just having the keywords in play, right? Like, I just want to have the movable cards there and then follow up on them with cool synergies like this one. All right, moving on here to Mary Jane. It's actually sick to get some really iconic characters like this that actually aren't a Marvel Snap yet. Now, I know it's a little hypocritical because I've been kind of down on the like regular human people characters that aren't superheroes. You know, Karen Page is just sitting at a desk or whatever, but it's freaking Mary Jane, dude. She's like as iconic as it gets, right? So I'm giving a pass here to Mary Jane. 3/3 stat line here. End of turn effect. Give each of your cards that moved this turn +1 power. So a little bit of a scaler here for your move deck. If you're just playing a lot of movable stuff and kind of jostling it around, you know, you got a Madam Web in there, card moving. I think there's a scenario where this kind of gives +2 power per turn average for some of these decks, right? Maybe even more sometimes, where if you're playing this on turn 3, you know, by the time you get to turn 6, maybe you're looking at an extra like 6 to 8 total power that came out of your Mary Jane. And then frankly, if you drop a Heimdall at the end, you might move a ton of cards, and she could even buff herself, it looks like, as well. So you know, you could maybe jump another 6 to 8 power at the very end with a single Heimdall. You know, maybe Mary Jane's worth, who knows, 15 total points or more throughout the course of a game. Maybe that's kind of a lofty expectation. Maybe a more realistic number is like an extra 7 or 8 points or something throughout the course of a game. But either way, I'm looking at this something, well, okay, that's kind of like a 310, 312, sometimes a 320 when things go crazy, right? Like that's pretty good stat output. Now it is like split stats, which sometimes can be risky, you know, but because sometimes that's kind of wasting power in a card here or there. But ultimately, if it's just a lot of raw numbers, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm kind of in on just playing a lot of stuff that can move and giving it a lot of little points. Mary Jane's going to be giving a boost. Spider-Spin's going to be giving a boost. And it's like, okay, everybody's got like an extra 5 power right now. This is just a lot of raw numbers, you know, just big dudes. Basically, all my little to medium-sized guys are suddenly monster threats. I kind of see it working, and I kind of see it stacking up in a big way. So ultimately, I think Mary Jane shows some promise here. So next up, we also have Aunt May. Again, I know, old lady drinking coffee. Not the most exciting character, but it's freaking Aunt May, dude. I'm going to let it slide. Like, she deserves some love. She's a 2/3. End of turn again. If you used a movable ability, give a movable card in your hand -1 cost and +2 power. And that's great, man. Like, that's great. You play Spider-Man on turn 1, Aunt May on turn 2. You move Spider-Man over. Aunt May goes off. She's discounting and buffing. Like, we've seen from, you know, Mother Ascani how good that -1 cost +2 power combo feels. I guess same thing with Majestic Wingbeat as well. It feels really good. Like, Ascani, of course, takes it to another level with a copy, but you get the idea. Like, you're still really happy. And it just starts stacking up. And it's, again, maybe going off, like, probably not actually on turn 3, although actually Spider-Man, you could move him again on turn 3 because he's movable twice. So you could chain this every single turn. Of course, you know, on turn 6, it doesn't really do much, but basically turns 2, 3, 4, and 5, you're talking about some monster plays like -4 and +8. That makes this card a -2 cost, 11 power total output card if you hit every single turn, which of course, -2 total cost, right? That's insane, right? Like, that's really good. And I think, again, like, this is another just really nice movable synergy. Is going to help you get that spider sense down more reliably too with all these discounts. So ultimately, I think this looks good. You've also got 2 end of turn synergies happening here. I don't know if there's some other end of turn stuff that could come in here. Is Invisible Woman joining this deck? I doubt it. I don't think you have room for all that. But something to keep an eye on, because this is fun little bonus here. And I think ultimately some great cards to support Spider-Man and beyond. So next up is Tarantula. This dude looks cool. 2/2. End of turn again here. If you have the highest power among cards in play, give this and 2 cards in your hand +1 power. So we're seeing that Wilson Fisk ability pulled back up here again. But this time, instead of enabling Wilson Fisk, you're getting this cool end of turn where, again, you're kind of getting some nice point output because it's +3 points of power every single time this hits. So, you know, if this hits from turns 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, you're talking about 5 extra points on Tarantula himself, making him a 2/7. But then also effectively kind of 4 turns, because, you know, at the end of turn 6, the cards in hand's extra power won't matter, but 4 turns of hand buffs as well. I mean, another 8 power coming out of your hand, basically, if you play all those. You probably won't always, but like theoretically, you're talking about 15 points out of your 2-drop, which is pretty exciting. More realistically, I'd say, you know, because you can't play all those cards reliably, maybe 10 to 12 points out of your 2-drop. You also won't hit the highest power always, but still, like, this could stack up to quite a bit of points, man. It's this cool little hand buff upside, basically. And this is certainly not a card that needs to be in movable decks. This could absolutely be in a deck that cares a lot about buffs, just having some big crazy numbers. You know, play Martyr on turn 1, Tarantula on turn 2, Wilson Fisk on turn 3. You're off to the races. Like, that's an insane setup. Your Wilson might already be 10 power too, basically, from your Tarantula. So, you know, you're going to get ahead early and just farm and get a ton of extra points. So, I think this actually makes a ton of sense. And we've seen, too, that, like, Martyr's a strong enough 1-drop for this that you don't need Tarantula himself to be good at 2. Kind of the same thing as Punisher War Machine decks, right? Like, if that Martyr holds, that's good. That's good enough. And Wilson decks certainly, too. So, I think this shows some absolute promise. I don't think it's, like, nuts, but I think it's good. All right, so moving on here to Boomerang. Fantastic flavor on this one. It's a 2/2, and it reads, when this returns to your hand, randomly steal 4 power from cards in your opponent's hand, and then activate, return this to your hand. So basically, you spin the 2, you bounce this back to your hand, probably just whenever, as soon as you can, right? He's going to steal power, not just afflict, so he is basically going to be a 2/6. And your opponent is going to have, you know, 4 cards afflicted, basically kind of like a scorpion hits them. Now, you know, at that point, of course, you're going to need to replay the Boomerang to get that 6 points back into play. So in a weird way, if you look at this, this is kind of like a 4/6 scorpion, right? Like, I think that's a fair way to describe this, right? Which I'm not like super excited about a 4/6 scorpion, right? That doesn't actually sound that good if I think about it. Scorpion, frankly, can afflict even more cards. Like, I'm not like that excited about the affliction and the stat line. So you're gonna need multiple bounces to really make this feel, you know, super worth it, which, you know, you can play this in a bounce deck, you know, use Beast, use Toxin, whatever, do it again. Then you're talking about but the thing is, you have to spend that 2 mana again. So now you're talking about kind of like a 6/10, right? Because it's 4 every time, right? So you got to spend the 2. So 6/10. I mean, Beast, you know, might be cheaper, whatever. But, you know, effectively kind of 6/10 that is now stolen, you know, 8 power from opponents. Something about this, like, return on cost doesn't feel super efficient to me. Like, yeah, the affliction could pay off if they end up playing, you know, 2 or 3 of those cards. Maybe you're now at like 6/14, 6/16 or something in total output. But I don't know, like, man, if this were a 1-cost card that afflicted like 2 or 3 or something, right, man, I'd be a lot more excited about it. I just worry, like, a bounce deck, don't they have better ways to gain kind of net points per energy cost? Like, even like a Rocket Raccoon, right? He's half the cost and still gaining points. He's like, you don't know for sure that the affliction side of this is actually going to net you a value or not. Like, it maybe a little bit, but not that reliably. So it's like, is doubling the cost worth potentially maybe only like 2 or 3 extra points per cycle? And it's, you know, doubling the cost per cycle. So throughout the course of multiple cycles, you might have 3 or 4 extra cost compared to something like a Rocket, for instance. So I don't know. Like, bounce as an archetype has been buried for a while. Like, we never see bounce anymore. It used to be good at its moments for sure. So I just worry, like, man, I don't think this is going to keep up. I think they're going to want like faster, more efficient stuff, particularly as bounce is so curve dependent where, you know, you have to hit the beasts and the toxins on time. You have to weave it all in. That 2 cost every time you loop this, I think it's going to be too much. So A+ flavor, you know, a Boomerang card returning to hand is hilarious. That's amazing. There's something interesting about this, but I feel like the numbers are just a little off for the decks that might really care about this one a lot. And I don't think it gets run just as is either, by the way. Like, I don't think affliction decks just run this as like a 4/6 or anything. I think that's too hard to work with. So next up here is Tombstone. This actually got a rework. This card has been in the game in one way or another forever. And then we got a version in the datamines a long time ago that never came out. And I guess this is a new version of it, because I think it was a movable card or move synergy card when we saw it last time, but now it's a destroy synergy card. This is a 2/3 on reveal. Destroy your lowest power card at each other location. So I kind of like this, like, destroy activator that doesn't have to be in the same spot. This came to mind actually recently with the Muse, where I was like, you know, it's like, oh man, I really need to destroy a card mid. I want to play my Carnage mid, but it's like, oh, but I have my Archangel mid already, and it's like, I don't want to do that. So it's like, this kind of gives you this sneakiness to sort of throw something small there and destroy it, and maybe it's like a Muse synergy card in that way, where it's like gives you access to locations. There's something neat there. Also, you know, just like, it's sort of Killmonger's ability to destroy things in multiple spots is really nice, because like, if I got a Bucky over here and a Wolverine over here and I want to destroy them both, but somehow the Wolverine ended up in the wrong spot or whatever, Tombstone can snipe both of those, right? So it's like, okay, that's kind of cool that I can hit both of those. So I don't know if that's like worth a slot in the destroy deck, right? Usually you want to build stacks and stuff. Is that sneakiness really enough upside there? But another angle on this I like is that it's Nimrod. You can actually make Nimrod your lowest power card. Lowest power card doesn't mean it has to be a low power card. If it's the only card, this is actually able to destroy 2 Nimrods in 2 different spots, which sometimes is harder to do. Like, you know, this could be actually a really cool Nimrod setup, whereas, you know, normally it's like Carnage, Venom. Maybe you use a Tombstone in the mix where it's like you Venom, send the Nimrods into the other 2 spots, and then you Tombstone right behind the Venom and destroy both of those Nimrods again, right? And it's like you've got a super crazy strong Venom spot and then one other spot with, like, you know, well, actually, does one spot end up with only 1 Nimrod each? No. You still have like 2. Whatever the case, you get the idea, right? Like maybe an extra layer of Nimrods because you can kind of destroy extra ones via your Tombstone. I mean, like Carnage still lets you destroy multiples. I gotta math that out a little more, but you get the idea. Is like access and multiple units across locations could sometimes have some upside. So I think it's neat. It's like a utility card for destroy decks in a weird way. Maybe there's even some weird stuff with like clearing out rocks in a clog deck or something too. I don't know. We don't really have clog decks anymore because debris doesn't affect opponents. But you know, sometimes that asymmetry of like I can get rid of my small stuff, but you can't. You know, maybe just, you know, able to destroy multiple bodies to discount your death more reliably. I don't know. Right? There's just, I'm trying to scratch for upsides here, and it's like I think it's like niche and utility at most. I'm not like super excited about it, so I don't know. As it stands, I don't know if this does quite enough. All right, so moving on here. Got a couple cards from what I think are going to be a Western season called Fractured Frontier. This is a made-up logo I added in here, but that's the name at least. There's also one card I'm not going to show in this video, which is a Thanos that uses a gun which fires Infinity Stones based on the text of the card, but I always wait till there's pictures. So we're going to wait on that one. It's out there. There's going to be a link in the description. I always link the Snap Fan data mining article. You can go check it out there if you'd like, but I'm gonna wait till there's pictures to show you that one. But anyway, this is a Hellcow, a 3/2 Hellcow Fractured Frontier, excuse me. End of turn, afflict all other characters here with -1 power, then destroy your friendly cards here if their power is 0 or less. Which this is pretty cool, right? This is like a potentially really big affliction effect. Kind of gives me Cyclops vibes from High Evo, where you're just hitting your opponent's cards turn after turn, but not limited to 2. Could take out 4 cards all at once. So like, you know, -4 per turn, basically. It does not hit itself, so you're not worried about that. Now, if you have other cards here, they will also get afflicted, which sometimes could be an upside, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm going to afflict my stuff for now, just to enable whatever other synergy I have or whatever, right? Like New Polaris or something I think cares about your afflicted cards. But then if they get too small, I don't want to deal with that negative power, so Hellcow is going to destroy those cards and remove that downside, open up some space for me, whatever it is, right? Clear a rock or something else, I can play a card later. So ultimately that feels like a good thing, not a bad thing. Of course, it still can be a bad thing, because if you want to put like a 5 power card behind it, you know, of course that's going to get some debuffs and unlikely to ever get destroyed, because it's unlikely to go to 0 or less. So you still have to be a little careful with Hellcow, but like this could be a powerhouse, you know, and like hitting 3-4 things to the opponent's a big deal for all those other synergies. We just saw, like, you know, New Scorpion, Abominations, you know, all this stuff gets pretty big. Ajax actually gets crazy big off Hellcow because you don't even mind hitting your own stuff in that case. So pretty cool little affliction synergy card here. Maybe a destroy angle on this too, technically, but you know, I think that's tough. Like, sure, throw a hood in here or whatever, don't worry about the points, but I don't think you're gonna run like destroy cards in there. You're not putting a Bucky Barnes behind your Hellcow as far as I can tell, but still, just, you know, big affliction output here. And then our final card here is Dr. Octopus Fractured Frontier. Again, made up logo, don't forget. This is a 2/1 with on reveal, put the leftmost card in your hand on top of your deck to add a random character to your hand. So basically going to be kind of trading out your leftmost card for some just totally random character. Like, not a random character from your deck, just totally random generated card out of nowhere. And then both are going to get +3 power. So basically, if you have a card on the leftmost side that loves a buff, put it on top of your deck, buff it, and immediately draw it next turn for the buffed version. Kind of an America Chavez, but where you get to see and pick basically what you're going to buff in that scenario. Now, on top of that, I'm going to tease that there was also a keyword teased in these data mines called Quick Draw, which again, Western themed, right? Shooting a gun. Which, if it's anything like Hearthstone, Quick Draw on Hearthstone is when a card is added to hand, it has sort of a bonus. And I think for Marvel Snap specifically, that's likely to be when a card is drawn, it's going to have an extra bonus if you play it that same turn. Excuse me, I didn't actually say that part. Has a bonus if you play it the same turn that you draw it. So basically this would allow you to, like, if you have a quick draw card that's stuck in your hand, but you want to realize the benefit of that quick draw effect, this lets you put it back on the top of your deck, buffed, and then when you draw it, you get to play it for that quick draw bonus, and now you have a buff on top of that as well. So Dr. Octopus, you know, could just be like a buff synergy card, could be a quick draw synergy card as we see more of that keyword and make sure that's actually what it means. Could just be like a card generation card, right? Like, I just want a big buffed thing for my Victoria hand deck or whatever. That's a possibility here as well for Dr. Octopus. So a few interesting angles for this one. I think this one's actually kind of sneaky, intriguing, and like the fact that it gives you +6 points potentially makes this look a bit like a 2/7 with some additional potential upsides, but also even if it's just a 2/4 because you don't play the random card, those upsides might be worth it. So kind of intriguing here with Doc Ock Fractured Frontier. So all that said, let's go ahead and rank these cards from best to worst. Spider-Man Brand New Day is my number 1 card. Number 2 is Scorpion Spider-Man Brand New Day. Number 3 is Aunt May. Number 4 is Spider Sense. Number 5 is Mary Jane. Number 6 is Tarantula. Number 7 is Hellcow. Number 8 is Dr. Octopus. Number 9 is Tombstone. Number 10 is the Sinister Six, which my hype is number 1 maybe for this, but my power level assessment is maybe 10th, unless I'm just missing some insanely obvious synergy that makes this nuts, which I hope I'm not missing it. But if so, I hope I find out from you guys. So anyway, those are the new cards coming to Marvel Snap in the nearish future. Of course, all still subject to change, but share your thoughts on all these cards down below. Which ones you're hyped to try, which ones you're not. I want to see all that and more down in the comments. Thanks as always for watching, and I guess I will see you around.